Let's start off with the Bella Twins. 7 words I don't think I have ever opened this show with, and likely the only time that I ever will. Because the Bella Twins are gone from WWE, and they are no longer the Bella Twins. People magazine broke the news on Tuesday that Nikki and Brie Bella are leaving WWE, and they will be going by their real names of Brie Garcia, or I guess in her case, Brie Garcia Danielson, and Nikki Garcia. They're now the Garcia Twins. And I will be perfectly honest with you, I didn't know they were still under contract to WWE, at least not as performers. I thought they just brought them in for special appearances every now and then. I guess WWE is listed as a producer on some of their reality shows, so I suppose there was some sort of contract, but just the idea of them still being under contract to WWE, I just didn't even give that a second thought. I had no idea they were still signed to actual contracts, so they are gone. On their SiriusXM show, they talked about turning 40 this November and how they're mothers and they're entrepreneurs and they're, hosting shows. And when their contracts came up with WWE, they mutually knew that they just needed to move on to the next chapter of their lives. And it is interesting that this comes so soon after Raw's 30th anniversary in January. And that Instagram live video they posted that night calling out the company for its lack of female representation on that show. Between that and them visiting backstage at Dynamite a few weeks ago, I guess the writing was on the wall. Now, Nikki says that they are not going to AEW. Since I know a lot of people assume that, well, of course they're going to be headed to AEW because, Bryan Danielson works there, and so why not? Nikki says no. They've got a couple of television shows, they've got a podcast, they've got a wine brand. They haven't been in the ring in years. I don't see the need for them to go to AEW or to another wrestling promotion to work. Nor do I think Tony Khan needs the Bella Twins. But this is wrestling. Today she says no. 6 months from now, she might be singing a different tune. Speaking of tunes, at least I will never have to hear that wretched theme song ever again. What can be said about Brie Mode? I know I won't ever forget the time that she kicked Liv Morgan in the face. Not once, but twice. And knocked her out. Gave her a concussion. I don't want to beat her up too much over it because I know she was very upset about that. Mistakes happen. But that was one of the scarier things. That was one of the more egregious things that I have ever seen on Monday Night Raw. As were the 2 botched suicide dive spots that Brie did when the Bellas wrestled the Riot Squad. Brie almost killed herself not once but twice. In the same match, she took the term suicide dive a little too seriously that night. A little too literally. The stuff with Nikki turning on Brie. The segment in the ring with Jerry Lawler where Nikki told Brie she wished she had died in the womb. I've seen better acting in a community theater play than I did in that segment. The Jerry Springer intervention. Now that I think about it, the Bellas have been part of some truly horrendous segments in Raw history. When you put it in these terms and you really start listing them out, it's some pretty awful shit. Nikki Bella, of course, had that long run as the Divas champion. And she had more success as a single than Brie did. I just think Nikki was just a better in-ring performer than Brie was. But I will give Brie credit. She and Stephanie McMahon, they did have a match that I remember being better than it had any right to be at SummerSlam back in 2014. It's been a while since I've seen that match. In fact, I haven't seen it since the night that I watched it. But from what I can remember, it was not bad. It was better than it had any right to be. Because even Stephanie at that point, it's not like Stephanie was an active, regular performer. But I can sit here and tell you that the Bellas were part of some terrible television, and they were. And creative bears the blame for a lot of that as well. But in their defense, I do think the Bellas get more grief than they should when it comes to the whole, women's evolution or women's revolution thing, because to a lot of fans, they were the antithesis of this revolution that took place. They were the antithesis of Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch and Bayley and a lot of the other women who came up through NXT. And since then, Asuka and Bianca Belair, right? They were looked at as the antithesis of that. In some cases, came up through the independent scene. A lot of these women did, worked their way up. The Bellas didn't do that. They entered the Diva Search one year, and they didn't win, but they got a developmental deal out of it, and by the following year, they were already on television. I mean, there are people who scratch and claw their way to get to developmental, whether back then it was, OVW, FCW, now it's the Performance Center at NXT, scratch and claw for years, and then when they get there, if they get there, they'll spend years down in NXT. They'll spend years in Orlando before they even see Raw or SmackDown. And within a year, they were already on TV. They came from an era of women's wrestling in WWE that was based less on in-ring ability and promo ability and more just on looks. Tits and ass. That's what it was based on. That's why they called it the Divas and the Diva Search. John Laurinaitis, he would look up women in catalogs and sign them based on how big their chest was. I mean, we already know the man is a fucking creep. Funny enough, he married into the Bella family, but he is no less of a sleaze. And when he was replaced by Triple H, it was Triple H who brought in Sarah Del Rey, Sarah Amato, to be their head female trainer. That was around the time that FCW became NXT. Back then, the women got hardly any ring time on television at all. It became a running joke. They would be at the gorilla position waiting to go out, already getting the cue to go home. They hadn't even gone through the curtain yet. They're already telling them to go home. And the Bellas tried. They claim that they tried to change that. They tried to get more ring time for the women. They were turned down. They had their time cut just like everybody else. They wanted the chance to go out there and do more in the ring. They heard the comments. They saw the social media posts. Oh, they can't work. They're only here for this or that, and they suck, and this. So, of course, in their mind, they're probably like, well, if you give us the chance, maybe we'll show people that we're here for more than just that. But they were getting their time cut just like everybody else. And the Bellas were part of a pivotal moment in women's wrestling history in WWE, February 23rd, 2015. They were scheduled to wrestle Paige and Emma. It was the post-Fastlane episode of Monday Night Raw. The match lasted all of 30 seconds. Fans took to Twitter that night. They got the Give Divas a Chance hashtag trending. And by the summer, WWE called 3 of the 4 horsewomen up from NXT to the main roster. And the rest is history. The following year at WrestleMania, the Divas title was junked. And the Women's Championship was restored. AJ Lee did more to speak up for the talent than the Bellas or anybody else did on that roster. When she tweeted back at Stephanie McMahon after Stephanie was talking about, women's rights. I don't know if it was a holiday or something. Stephanie had tweeted something and AJ saw that and she jumped on it. She clapped back and said, you're female wrestlers. We sell record merchandise. And a lot of times we have the highest rated segments on the show, yet we earn a fraction of what the men do. And we get a fraction of the television time that the men do. Nobody else on the roster had the balls to say that out loud, let alone address it directly to Stephanie in a public forum like that. I'm sure Stephanie wasn't very happy being called out like that. And AJ was still with the company at that point. CM Punk had already left. AJ was on her way out also, but she was still there. She was still under contract and working there when she tweeted that. But the Bellas get shit on in part, not entirely, but in part for being part of that past era of the Divas. To a lot of people, they were an example of what they wanted WWE to get away from when it came to the women's division. They became the face of the Divas era. Rightly or wrongly, they became the face of that era when in reality, they were trying on their own part to get more television time and some more focus for the division. They didn't like going out there and being sent to the back after 30 seconds every week. Could they have used their voices publicly the way that AJ did? Absolutely. Of course. And AJ was on her way out, so I doubt that she cared at that point whose feathers she ruffled. But yes, they could have used their voice in more of an active way publicly like that. It's too bad, really, because after AJ's pipe bomb on the Divas, that pipe bomb promo she did on Raw, they got so offended by it. Some of the women in that segment. I don't know if it was the Bellas in particular or if it was some of the other ladies, but I know that some of the women got legitimately offended by what AJ said. And I guess she got all up in their feelings. Even though AJ has said that she was only being harsh, because that was the character that she was playing, and she was hoping it would help get more attention on the division. They had plans to follow up on her promo, and those plans got dropped because of those hurt feelings, which is too bad, because I think there was more there that could have been done. But that closes the book on the Bella chapter of WWE. Brie Mode has been deactivated.